What's going on, guys? So Strange Matter Studios just dropped a new update, patch 6.2, or technically 0.6.2. So if anything, there's actually quite a lot of things that are in this patch that I'm kind of iffy about. So let's not waste any time. Let's get to it. All right, guys. So here's patch 0.6.2. Now, let's just get right into it. Now, the first thing that they actually changed is the hero respawn times. So if anything, I got my little notes here. So essentially, the new respawn times changed so that it's a 6-second minimum and then a 78-second maximum. And in between, that's going to be now more based on your level as opposed to some other metric that they had in there before. Now, the lane minions, they did change the lane minions so that the lane minions now aggro the hero more and aggro the tower more. Now, the minions aren't going to get as distracted going back to the minion wave itself. So be careful when laning because these minions will fuck you up as you play down the road. Now, interesting here. Now, they made a couple of quality of life changes, but I don't know if I agree with some of these. For example, they added on here the fountain birth is what they're calling it. Essentially, you're going to get movement speed for the first 60 seconds of the match. And I mean, that one I don't mind. That one I like because you're able to ward, you're able to go back, sell your ward, your sentry, just whatever it is that you're actually going to do. Let's say you go place your ward down, sell your ward, then go grab a rad pulse. That's going to be very viable for like junglers or anybody that actually wants to apply strats like that. So I'm okay with that one, to be honest. Now, I didn't actually mean to skip this one here. So Shadow Plane, they added visual and sound effects for when the players enter and leave the Shadow Plane, and additional visual effects while they're in the Shadow Plane. So it's interesting seeing them and actually work with the other company that joined them in order to add more sound effects and more visuals and stuff like that. So that's nice to see there. But this one here, this is the one that kind of threw me off, these next two here. So basically, after 20 minutes, you get a movement speed out of the tower. So basically, after the 20-minute mark, you now get a movement speed again. Now, I get why this might be like, hey, this is kind of like so that matches end faster. But when you put it together with this next one, at the 20-minute mark, also all jump pads are destroyed. So at 20 minutes, all jump pads are destroyed, and now everybody gets a movement speed out of base. So I can imagine that the movement speed is a little bit less impactful than the jump pads, but I don't know if I potentially like that because the whole purpose of losing a tier 2 tower is to lose that mobility. Now you're telling me for the rest of the game, you have mobility out of your tower. I don't know if I agree with the fountain spring and the jump pads being put in there together. I actually don't really like those. You guys let me know in the comments below what you guys think about that one. Now, they did add a cinematic for when the match ends, core is destroyed, like a little cutscene, so to speak. So that's kind of cool. I like that. Now, this one, I'm a little bit confused about this one, to be honest with you guys. So this one says ability decals. Ability decals have been updated to be more visually appealing. The outside of the decal would now change color depending on whether the ability belongs to an enemy or an allied hero. Now, I'm pretty sure what they mean is like the color coordination. Like an ability is going to look a certain color if it belongs to an enemy hero versus an ally hero. But I'm not sure why it's called ability decal, to be honest. I would have probably chosen a different terminology there. But I'm pretty sure what that means is that the color coordination is actually going to be changing based off of ally or enemy. Now, moving forward also, so in the menu, this is interesting. They added the tutorial menu to the tutorial video to the menu. But the video must be watched completely when you first log in. I kind of like that for like a brand new player. Like they can't skip that tutorial video. So I don't mind that. I like that. I'm wondering how many people are actually going to watch it, to be honest. But yeah, that one I don't mind. And the hide show enemy ally health bars default keys are now set to O and P. Thank you fucking Jesus, because I swear to God that Z and X, people turned off the health bars so much. I'm pretty sure a lot of people were complaining that the health bars were bugged without realizing they were turning it off themselves. So that I agree with. The tutorial video being mandatory, you know what? It's a good start. It's a good start because even though there might be stuff in there that not everybody needs to watch, it's going to be one of those things that, hey, this is the new game. Watch the tutorial video. If you're playing the game, you have zero excuses to at least not know some of the foundation unless you didn't pay attention. So I get what they're trying to do there. I can imagine there's going to be a little bit of a backlash from them forcing people to watch it. But if it's a one-time thing, people can get over that shit, to be honest. Now, this one is super interesting. They now have auto pick servers. So basically you just queue up and it's going to pick the best server for you. So now there's no server avoidance. You can't be like, hey, fuck NA servers, I'm going to EU. You play at the closest server. And I'm assuming they did that because too many people were avoiding servers before because of their experimentation on servers. So I see why they did that. I see why they need to do that, because they need to collect data and improve that shit as quick as possible. And they can't do that if people are avoiding the server they're working on. So I get it. Again, that's one of those, I can easily imagine the backlash that's going to come out of that. Now, there's a couple of fixes here that they applied. And quite frankly, guys, you know me, if they're fixes, that shit that should have been working already. So we don't go over those here. But let's go ahead and go into the balance stuff, because that's what we really care about here. Now, a low-key ADC buff actually kicks in. Basic attacks projectile speed has been increased by 23%. Yo. Basic attack speed, like not the actual attack speed itself, but the projectile speed, but increased by 23%. That means that's almost a fourth less of having to lead your shot to land it. That's pretty significant. That means you're going to be landing those shots, as long as your crosshair placement's on point, you're going to be landing some of those shots a lot more consistently, which is really, really nice for ADCs. Now, they did buff the prime buff, or actually they nerfed the prime buff, excuse me. So basically, instead of it giving you a base mana regen and health regen based off of your max health, now it's going to be based off of how much health and mana you're missing. So still not bad, and potentially you could probably get even more if you're really, really low. But it's one of those things that it's not always going to be there making you constantly OP, which is kind of ironic because it is the orb prime buff, you know? But, and then also minion armor aura reduced from 200 to 10. So now if you want your minions to get that buff, I'm sorry, not to 10, to 100. But if you want your minions to get that armor buff, you got to be right up on them and fighting with them. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's going to be a lot more deliberate. Like, you're going to have to literally get up on the minions to give them that buff. Now, a couple things that also got changed here. Minion stats did get nerfed. Now, what it says here is the health gained every 3 waves was reduced from 80 to 60. Attack range was decreased from 600 to 300. And then siege minions now spawn in between melee and range minions. So that one's really more of an adjustment. But essentially, so their health and their attack range got reduced. So they reduced the overall range and health. And I'm assuming that has to do with the fact that now the minions are going to stick onto, you know, chasing you and targeting you a little bit more in lane. So I can see why they did that, because if not, those minions would have really fucked you up in the middle of the lane. Now, when we move on forward to the items, several different things to go into here, because they basically are finishing up changing the names of almost every single item and adjusting some more item stats as well. Guys, like build videos will be coming. I'm honestly waiting for all these crazy build changes to kind of slow down, so we can actually put out a build video that might actually last more than 1 week. So bear with me on that front, guys. But if anything, a couple things to note here. All favor scaling is removed from boots. Boots no longer give you favor scaling. You're no longer going to have the attack speed scaling for ADCs, the pen scaling for mages. Honestly, that's kind of fucking bonkers. That's kind of bonkers. Like, that changes the game a lot, to be honest. Like, a lot. Like, I don't know why they did this. I'm sure they must have had a reason for it. I don't necessarily think that specific part was needed. Maybe changing the actual scaling amount, since it's all based off of favor, but I see what they're doing. And they did adjust a couple of the stats to compensate for the fact that they're not going to be scaling, so we'll go over those in a moment. Now, interesting, they increased all physical power scaling from 0.5 to 1. So now physical power scaling is back on track. Be mindful. ADCs and any basic attack-based junglers, you are going to scale harder as the game progresses. So keep that in mind. Now, interestingly enough, also, they're reducing the energy armor and the physical armor scaling on favor. So now armor items won't scale as much. So that potentially is putting ADC and a certain other physical based champions like Greystone, Chimera, and all that. It's putting them in a more interesting position. That's the word I'm going to use. I'm going to use interesting because they're going to be less tanky, but they're going to do more damage. So it almost might be worth building a little bit, like one extra tank card and one less damage card because it scales better. But we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes after the change. Now, they're changing a lot of these names, like energy cells now power cells, spring is now tempered vial, which I don't really understand that because that's the attack speed item of a vial, but I guess, okay. Stimulant is now limitless liquid, frenzy powder is unstable tonic, modified holster is now the leather satchel. So what I'm saying is because they are mentioning here that these are all placeholder artwork until they're able to create their own. So my wild guess is that they're using the artwork, putting it into an item, and then like, hey, that artwork doesn't match that item. Let's change that item name. Essentially what they're doing, just so they can have a more cohesive item shop. See, like Academy Pistol just got turned into Sturdy Grip just because they had a picture of a grip to use. That's what I'm assuming is happening here. Now, interestingly enough, Baleful Armor, the active got removed. Wow. I mean, Baleful Armor was a really, really strong item. They removed the active. That's going to be interesting as far as how matches play out. Essence of Time. Okay, so they reduce energy armor. They reduce physical armor. Health regen got increased. Mana regen got increased. Remove favor scaling and added mana and health regen scaling. Wow, that's going to be a really good support item, guys. That's going to be a really good support item. Not only is it going to give you armor a little bit less, but you're going to have mana and health regen scaling instead of armor scaling. So you could possibly start with an Essence of Time and then move on through. And as you're moving on, your energy scaling, your mana scaling and your health regen scaling, your regens, it's going to be increasing. So not bad right there. Eliminating grabs. They reduce the cost. Which one was, let's see, eliminating grabs. I don't even know what that was before, but that's a new name now. So energy armor reduced, physical armor reduced, energy power increased from 25 to 30. So it looks like, okay, that's interesting. So they reduce the cost, they reduce all the armor and increase the power scaling a little bit. My only question is why? Like, was that item just a little bit too OP with 30, 30, 25? That they changed it to 25, 25, 30? I don't know. Inertia wraps, because we're going to go over the boots here because most of them are getting adjusted here. So endurance is reduced from 35 to 20. Increase energy armor from 8 to 18 and remove physical armor. Wow, so they not only get rid of the favor scaling, they remove physical armor, they add energy armor, and then reduce your endurance to CC and everything. What a nerf. What in the, oh my god. What a nerf. So inertia wraps literally just give you energy armor now. Interesting. Honestly, I can see it that unless you're going up against like a heavy energy based team, you might honestly just want to consider the shadow boots as a jungler. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Radiant poise, energy armor and physical armor reduced by a third. Wow. Energy power increased. And then removed energy armor scaling and added energy power scaling. So they turned Radiant Poise from a support item, mainly a support item to now a more of a damage item with a little bit of armor. Wow, so mages are going to be able to build this item. It's going to infinitely scale in damage, but it's going to give them a little bit of armor at the same time. That might not be a bad mage item to consider for everybody. Robe of Miracles, they changed the active. What? Okay, so they got rid of the heal around you. Now you hear you still heal nearby allies within 1,000 units for base amount times 10 times the level. Any ally who has had this effect, oh, got it. So it's no longer based off of percentage. It's a flat number that they get healed by. Okay, that's not a bad thing. I'm okay with that one. That's a little bit more of a balance change that kind of needed to happen there. Now, let's go ahead and move on forward here. Substitution. So they reduced the cost of substitution and they removed 15 energy armor. What the hell? So now it only gives you physical armor on substitution? I don't know if I like that. That's going to make it harder for supports. Like the 200 gold difference isn't that much of a difference, but removing the energy armor as a support? Wow. Okay. Time Bender. Energy armor reduced from 32 to 25. Physical armor from 32 to 25. And then mana regen increase. Interestingly enough, they're reducing armor, it looks like, across the board and increasing a little bit of the regen. That's an interesting touch. And then Warlock Wares, since you no longer get stacking favor on the penetration, they're increasing the base penetration from 13 to 15. That... I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about these boot changes. I don't know about how I feel about these drastic armor reductions, because they're already lowering the armor favor scaling, but they're now simultaneously lowering the armor base stats also of items. Like, see that, like, for me, it's one of those things that I really wish they would just do one of the two and see how that changes, because reducing the base stat and the scaling, you're nerfing them a ton. Why not just reduce the scaling, see how that goes, and then next patch reduce the base stats if you need to, or vice versa. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not entirely sure why they're doing it that way, but, to each his own. Now, you can level up abilities faster now without having to wait for larger gaps in between levels. For example, before you had to wait to level up your abilities. Like the same ability, you could upgrade it level 1, 3, 6, 8. Now it's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So that same ability can be upgraded 5 times by level 9 now. Just worth keeping in mind there. Now, a couple of different things that they did here. Now, they essentially adjusted Grim. Grim has less scaling for the late game, but higher base damage early game. So now he's going to be a little bit better in the early rounds, but be mindful he won't be as powerful late game once you're at full build. Now, as well, on Murdock, they buffed his abilities, essentially. They reduced his deployment of his trap. They reduced the cast time of the trap in its own, so now it might be a little bit more usable in the actual lane. And then his ultimate, they increased the base damage, they increased the power scaling, they reduced the cast time on his ultimate. Not bad, not by much, but not bad. And then the recovery time, so you can actually get back up to fighting, is now half the time it took you before. So Murdock getting a little bit of love there to his abilities. So people are probably going to use him a little bit more. Sparrow, her hail of arrows got a massive. Her Q got a massive buff here. So her physical power scaling from her hail of arrows increased from 7.5% to 17% damage per take. So now the longer they're in there, the more damage they take. That might actually make the raining arrows from above a little bit more worthwhile to use their mid lane. In the middle of the lane. Now, Twin Blast, they increase the base damage on his grenades, and then they increase the range on his dash. So Twin Blast got a pretty decent buff too. Like, I'll be honest, guys, a lot of these balance changes I'm okay with. Some I'm not okay with. For example, the massive armor nerf, as opposed to just a slight adjustment and seeing how that goes. Like, I caution Strange Matter Studios and making drastic changes like that, because usually it just starts teeter-tottering, like too much of a nerf, too little of a, you know what I mean? So I think it's actually better for them to just go slowly towards these things. But some of these quality of life changes are pretty good. Like that basic attack projectile speed, that's not just for ADCs, that's for every single laner, so they can actually land their last hits a little bit easier, less of a delay in between actually pressing the button and the projectile actually getting there, if you get where I'm coming from. Like the hero respawn times, stuff like that, I'm okay with. The fountain, the extra movement speed in the beginning, a lot of MOBAs actually have that, but then this whole after 20 minutes, no more jump pads, but everybody has that little movement speed out of the tower. Like I'm just wondering myself, why? Like, what led to these little things? You know what I mean? Like, why are they focusing on these things? I'd love to hear what you guys think about these details in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and as always, till the next video.